Maria loved her morning runs. Every day at 6 in the morning, she would tie her running shoes and head out to the park near her house. The fresh air filled her lungs as she ran past the lake, greeting other early runners with a smile. Teaching third grade at the local elementary school was her passion, but these morning runs were her medicine. They kept her strong, happy, and ready for whatever the day would bring. Life was good for Maria. At 34, she had everything she wanted: a loving husband named Tom, a job she adored, and health that never gave her any trouble. The children in her classroom called her their favorite teacher because she made learning fun with games and stories. After school, she would often stay late to help students who needed extra support. On weekends, she and Tom would go hiking or visit farmers markets in their small town. But then cancer came knocking at her door. It started with feeling tired all the time. Maria thought she was just working too hard. The school year was busy, and she had taken on extra duties helping new teachers. But when the tiredness wouldn't go away, even after summer vacation started, Tom convinced her to see their family doctor. The test showed something no one expected: lymphoma, a type of blood cancer that attacks the body's defense system. The doctor's words felt like they were coming from far away. As Maria sat in the sterile examination room, Tom held her hand tight, but she felt like she was floating, disconnected from everything around her. The next few months became a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and fighting to get better. Maria had to take leave from teaching, which broke her heart. She missed her students and the joy of seeing their faces light up when they learned something new. The chemotherapy made her sick and weak. Her beautiful long hair fell out in clumps. The morning runs stopped completely. Tom became her rock during those dark months. He would sit with her during the long chemotherapy sessions, reading her favorite books out loud or just holding her hand when she felt too sick to talk. Her students sent her cards and drawings that covered every wall of their bedroom. The love and support kept her going when the treatment felt too hard to bear. After 6 months of treatment, the doctors had wonderful news. The cancer was gone. Maria cried tears of joy when she heard those words. She could finally start planning her return to normal life. The doctors said she would need time to recover her strength. But she was young and had beaten the hardest part. Everything would be okay now, or so she thought. 2 months after finishing chemotherapy, Maria noticed something strange. There was a small swelling in the area between her legs. At first, she didn't think much about it. Her body was still recovering from all the medicine, and the doctors had warned her about various side effects. She thought it would go away on its own, but it didn't go away. In fact, it got worse week by week. The swelling grew larger. It felt warm and tight, like her skin was being stretched too far. Walking became uncomfortable, then difficult, then almost impossible. The area felt heavy and sore all the time. Maria couldn't understand what was happening to her body. She went back to her cancer doctor, worried that the cancer might have returned, but the test showed no signs of cancer anywhere in her body. The doctor looked at the swelling and seemed puzzled. He prescribed some medicine for inflammation and told her to come back if it didn't get better. The medicine didn't help at all. Maria tried everything she could think of. She rested more, drank lots of water, and even tried special exercises she found online. Nothing worked. The swelling continued to grow, and walking became more painful each day. She had to use a cane just to move around the house. Tom watched his wife struggle with growing concern. The woman who used to run 5 miles every morning now had trouble walking to the mailbox. He could see the fear in her eyes, though she tried to hide it. They both wondered if this was connected to her cancer treatment, but none of the doctors seemed to know for sure. The worst part was how the swelling affected Maria's daily life. Simple things like getting dressed, taking a shower, or walking up the stairs became major challenges. She had been looking forward to returning to her classroom in the fall, but now that seemed impossible. How could she teach when she could barely walk? Sleep became difficult too. No matter how she positioned herself in bed, the swelling caused pain and discomfort. She would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what was wrong with her body. The fear was constant now, a heavy weight in her chest that matched the physical weight she felt between her legs. Tom tried to be strong for both of them, but Maria could see the worry in his eyes too. He had watched her fight cancer and win, and now they faced this new mystery together. Neither of them understood why this was happening or how to make it stop. As autumn approached and the new school year began without her, Maria felt more lost than ever. The children she loved were starting third grade with a different teacher, and she was trapped in her own home by a condition that no one seemed to understand or know how to treat. The woman who had run marathons and chased children around playgrounds was now struggling to walk from her bedroom to the kitchen. Something had gone very wrong, and Maria was about to begin the hardest fight of her life. Maria's condition was getting worse by the day. What started as uncomfortable swelling had turned into something that controlled every moment of her life. Walking to the bathroom had become a painful journey that took several minutes. She had to hold onto walls and furniture just to move around her own home. The swelling between her legs was now so large that she couldn't wear normal clothes anymore. Tom drove her to see Dr. Peterson, their family doctor who had known them for years. He examined Maria carefully and frowned with concern. He had never seen anything quite like this before. The swelling was firm and warm to the touch, but he couldn't find any obvious cause. He prescribed stronger pain medication and referred her to a specialist at the hospital. The specialist, Dr. Williams, was a busy man who seemed to have little time for puzzling cases. He looked at Maria's medical records and noted her recent cancer treatment. After a quick examination, he suggested that the swelling might be psychological. Stress from cancer treatment could manifest in many ways, he explained. Perhaps she needed to see a counselor rather than a medical specialist. Maria felt like she had been slapped. She knew her own body, and this was definitely not in her head. The pain was real. The swelling was real. The way it affected her ability to walk was absolutely real. But the doctor seemed convinced that her mind was playing tricks on her. Tom was furious, but tried to stay calm for Maria's sake. They left the hospital feeling more confused and hopeless than when they arrived. That night, Maria cried herself to sleep while Tom searched the internet for answers. He read about different conditions that could cause swelling, but nothing seemed to match exactly what Maria was experiencing. The next few months became a nightmare of medical appointments and dead ends. Maria saw 5 different doctors, and each one had a different theory. One thought it might be an infection and gave her antibiotics that didn't help. Another suggested it was a rare autoimmune condition and prescribed steroids that made her sick, but didn't reduce the swelling. A third doctor believed it was related to her weight gain from being less active. He suggested she simply needed to exercise more and eat less. Maria wanted to scream. How could she exercise when she could barely walk? The doctor's suggestion felt cruel and ignorant. Each appointment cost money they didn't have. Tom had already used up his vacation days taking Maria to medical visits. Their savings account was getting smaller with each specialist visit and expensive test. The financial stress added another layer of worry to their already difficult situation. Maria's world was shrinking. She could no longer drive because the swelling made it impossible to operate the pedals safely. Shopping, going to church, visiting friends, all of these normal activities were now impossible. She spent most of her days on the couch, feeling trapped in her own body. The isolation was almost as painful as the physical symptoms. Friends would call less often because Maria always had to cancel plans. Some people in their small town started whispering that maybe she wasn't really as sick as she claimed. After all, she looked fine from the outside. The swelling was hidden by loose clothing, and she had regained her hair and color after finishing cancer treatment. Tom became her only connection to the outside world. He would come home from work and tell her about his day, trying to keep her spirits up. But she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. He was working extra hours to cover their medical bills while also taking care of everything at home. The strong, independent woman he married was now completely dependent on him for basic needs. The worst moments came late at night when Maria lay awake, overwhelmed by pain and fear. She wondered if this was how the rest of her life would be. Would she ever teach again? Would she ever run through the park or dance with Tom at their friends' weddings? The future that once seemed so bright now felt dark and uncertain. Maria started spending hours online, searching medical websites and forums for people with similar symptoms. She read about rare conditions and experimental treatments. She printed out articles and brought them to doctors, only to be dismissed or told that she was overthinking her situation. One particularly difficult appointment was with Dr. Kumar, a specialist who barely looked up from his computer screen while she described her symptoms. He interrupted her several times and seemed more interested in getting through the appointment quickly than actually helping her. When Maria started crying from frustration, he handed her tissues and suggested she might benefit from anxiety medication. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in November. Maria woke up and realized she couldn't get out of bed without Tom's help. The swelling had reached a point where her mobility was almost completely gone. She couldn't even walk to the kitchen to make herself breakfast. The independent woman, who used to run marathons, was now helpless in her own home. That afternoon, while Tom was at work, Maria sat alone on their couch and cried harder than she had since her cancer diagnosis. At least with cancer, the doctors knew what they were fighting. There was a treatment plan and hope for recovery. This mysterious condition felt like fighting an invisible enemy with no weapons and no allies. She began to wonder if the doctors were right. Maybe this was all in her head. Maybe she was going crazy. The doubt crept in like poison, making her question everything she knew about her own body and experience. But deep down, Maria knew something was seriously wrong. She just had to find someone who would believe her and help her figure out what it was. The search for answers would continue, even if it felt hopeless right now. Maria had almost given up hope when something unexpected happened. It was a cold December evening, and she was lying on the couch scrolling through her phone, trying to distract herself from the constant pain. Tom was in the kitchen making dinner, and the house felt quiet except for the gentle sounds of cooking. She had been reading posts in an online support group for cancer survivors. Most of the time, these groups made her feel less alone. But tonight she was feeling particularly low. Then she saw a post that made her heart skip a beat. A woman named Lisa from Oregon was describing symptoms that sounded exactly like what Maria was experiencing. Lisa wrote about severe swelling that made walking impossible, about doctors who didn't understand, and about the isolation and fear that came with having a condition nobody could explain. But here was the important part. Lisa had found help. She had been treated by a specialist named Dr. Chen at a medical center in California, and her life had completely changed. Maria read Lisa's post 3 times, her hands shaking with excitement. For the first time in months, she felt a spark of hope. She called Tom over to read the post, and he could see the change in her expression immediately. This was the first real lead they had found after so many disappointing appointments. That night, Maria couldn't sleep, but for once it wasn't because of pain. She spent hours reading everything she could find about Dr. Chen and his work. He specialized in something called lymphedema, a condition where the body's lymphatic system doesn't work properly, causing severe swelling. The pictures she found online looked exactly like what she was experiencing. The lymphatic system, she learned, was like a drainage network in the body that helped remove excess fluid and waste. When cancer treatment damaged this system, fluid could build up and cause painful swelling. It made perfect sense. Her chemotherapy and radiation had likely damaged the lymphatic vessels in her pelvic area, causing the fluid to accumulate with no way to drain properly. Maria felt angry and relieved. At the same time, angry that none of the doctors she had seen knew about this condition, and relieved that there might finally be an explanation for her suffering. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't making it up. There was a real medical reason for everything she had been going through. The next morning, she called Dr. Chen's office. The receptionist was kind but explained that the doctor was very busy and had a long waiting list. The earliest appointment available was 3 months away. Maria's heart sank. 3 more months of being trapped in her house. 3 more months of pain and uncertainty. But then the receptionist asked about her symptoms and medical history. When Maria described her condition and mentioned her recent cancer treatment, the woman's tone changed. She put Maria on hold for several minutes. When she came back, she said Dr. Chen could see her in 2 weeks if she could travel to California. Maria started crying right there on the phone for the first time in months. Someone in the medical field was taking her seriously. Someone understood that her condition was urgent and needed immediate attention. The receptionist even gave her detailed instructions about what medical records to bring and how to prepare for the appointment. The next 2 weeks passed slowly. Maria and Tom made arrangements for the trip, which would cost money they didn't really have, but they both knew this might be their only chance to find real help. Tom took time off work, and they booked a hotel near the medical center. Maria's sister offered to drive them to the airport, since Maria still couldn't sit comfortably in a car for long periods. The flight was difficult, the airplane seat was narrow, and Maria had to ask for a seat belt extension. She felt embarrassed and uncomfortable, but Tom held her hand and reminded her that they were finally going to get answers. Dr. Chen's office was different from any medical facility Maria had visited before. The waiting room had comfortable chairs, designed for people with mobility issues. There were brochures about lymphedema and pictures of patients who had been successfully treated. Maria felt like she had finally found people who understood her condition. When Dr. Chen walked into the examination room, Maria knew immediately that this appointment would be different. He was a calm, gentle man who looked directly at her when she spoke. He didn't seem rushed or dismissive. He asked detailed questions about her symptoms and really listened to her answers. The examination was thorough but respectful. Dr. Chen explained everything he was looking for as he examined the swelling. He measured different areas and took notes carefully. Then he did something no other doctor had done. He explained exactly what he was seeing and why it was happening. "You have secondary lymphedema," he said quietly. "Your cancer treatment damaged the lymphatic vessels in your pelvic area. The fluid that should drain naturally is getting trapped, causing the swelling and pain you've been experiencing." Maria started crying again, but this time they were tears of relief. Finally, someone had given her condition a name. Finally, someone understood what was wrong and why it was happening. She wasn't imagining things, and she wasn't going crazy. Dr. Chen continued explaining that lymphedema was often overlooked or misunderstood, even by medical professionals. It was a real condition with real treatments, but it required specialized knowledge to diagnose and manage properly. He apologized that she had struggled for so long without proper care. The best part was what came next. Dr. Chen outlined a comprehensive treatment plan that could help reduce the swelling and improve her mobility. It would take time and require multiple approaches, but he was confident they could make her life much better. For the first time in almost a year, Maria felt truly hopeful about her future. Maria's treatment began immediately after her diagnosis. Dr. Chen explained that healing from lymphedema would be like climbing a mountain. It would take time, patience, and lots of small steps to reach the top. The journey wouldn't be easy, but every step forward would be progress toward getting her life back. The first part of her treatment was something called manual lymphatic drainage. Maria met Rebecca, a specially trained therapist who would become one of the most important people in her healing journey. Rebecca's hands were gentle but skilled, using specific massage techniques to help move the trapped fluid out of Maria's swollen tissues. The first session was emotional for Maria. As Rebecca worked, Maria could actually feel the fluid starting to move. It was the first time in months that she felt any improvement in her condition. She cried during that first session, not from pain, but from relief that something was finally helping. Rebecca explained that the lymphatic system was like a river that had been blocked by fallen trees. The manual drainage was like clearing those blockages one by one, helping the water flow again. It would take many sessions, but slowly they would restore the natural flow of fluid through her body. Maria had to travel back and forth to California for treatment, which was expensive and tiring. Tom used up all his vacation time and had to take unpaid leave to be with her. Their savings account was nearly empty, but they both knew this was their chance to get Maria's life back. After 2 weeks of daily drainage sessions, Dr. Chen introduced the next part of Maria's treatment plan. She would need to wear special compression garments that would help keep the swelling down. The first time Maria saw these garments, she felt overwhelmed. They looked complicated and uncomfortable, but Rebecca helped her understand how important they were. The compression garments would work like a gentle, constant hug, supporting her lymphatic system and preventing the fluid from building up again. Learning to put them on properly was challenging at first, but Maria was determined to do whatever it took to get better. The garments were uncomfortable in the beginning. They were tight and made her feel self-conscious, but after a few days, Maria noticed they were actually helping. The constant pressure felt supportive rather than restrictive, and the swelling was beginning to reduce. 3 months into treatment, Dr. Chen suggested that Maria might be a good candidate for a special surgical procedure. The surgery would involve creating new pathways for the lymphatic fluid to drain, essentially building new rivers where the old ones had been damaged. The idea of another surgery scared Maria. She had been through so much already with her cancer treatment, but Dr. Chen explained that this surgery was different. It was designed to help her body heal and function better, not to fight disease. The procedure was delicate and required a surgeon with very specific skills, but it could make a huge difference in her long-term recovery. Maria and Tom talked for hours about whether to move forward with the surgery. They were worried about the cost, the risks, and the recovery time, but they also knew that this might be Maria's best chance at returning to a normal life. Finally, they decided to trust Dr. Chen and move forward with the procedure. The surgery took place on a sunny Tuesday morning in spring. Tom sat in the waiting room for 4 hours, checking his phone constantly and drinking too much coffee. When Dr. Chen finally came out to talk to him, the surgeon was smiling. Everything had gone perfectly. He had been able to create several new drainage pathways that should significantly improve Maria's condition. Maria's recovery from surgery was slower than she had hoped. For the first few weeks, she felt worse than before. The surgical area was sore, and she worried that the procedure hadn't worked. But Rebecca assured her that this was normal. Her body needed time to heal and for the new pathways to start functioning properly, slowly. Things began to improve. 6 weeks after surgery, Maria noticed that the swelling was definitely smaller. She could walk a little farther without pain. Small victories, but they felt huge to Maria. She could shower without Tom's help for the first time in over a year. The physical therapy that followed was intense but encouraging. Maria worked with a team of specialists who helped her learn how to move her body properly. They taught her exercises to support her lymphatic system and showed her how to recognize signs that her condition might be getting worse. One of the hardest parts of recovery was dealing with the emotional aspects of her journey. Maria had to work through months of trauma, fear, and depression. She started seeing a counselor who specialized in helping patients with chronic conditions. Learning to trust her body again was just as important as the physical healing. 8 months after beginning treatment with Dr. Chen, Maria had a breakthrough day. She walked around her entire neighborhood without stopping to rest. The swelling was still there, and she still needed to wear her compression garments every day, but she was mobile again. She was independent again. That evening, she called her principal at the elementary school. She was ready to start thinking about returning to teaching, even if it had to be part-time at first. Her students had grown and moved on to 4th grade, but there would be new students who needed her enthusiasm and care. Maria's journey back to health wasn't a straight line. There were good days and difficult days, setbacks and breakthroughs. But for the first time in almost 2 years, she had hope and a clear path forward. 2 years after her diagnosis with lymphedema, Maria stood in front of her classroom mirror, adjusting her compression garments under her favorite teaching dress. Today was special. It was her first day back to full-time teaching. The morning routine that once seemed impossible was now manageable, though different from before. She could walk without pain, drive her own car, and stand in front of a classroom for hours. The swelling was still there, and she knew it always would be, but it no longer controlled her life. She had learned to live with her condition rather than fight against it. The children in her new third-grade class had no idea what their teacher had been through. To them, she was simply Mrs. Rodriguez, the enthusiastic woman who made learning fun with creative games and patient explanations. Maria chose not to hide her compression garments completely, but she didn't make them the focus either. They were simply part of who she was now. During recess duty, Maria would often think about how much her perspective had changed. She couldn't run around the playground with the children like she used to, but she found other ways to connect with them. She became the teacher who really listened when students had problems, who understood that everyone faces challenges that others can't see. One afternoon, a quiet girl named Jessica approached Maria after class. Jessica had been limping slightly for weeks, and other children had started teasing her about walking funny. Maria knelt down to Jessica's level and spoke gently about how everyone's body works differently, and how being kind to others was always more important than being perfect. That conversation reminded Maria of why she had fought so hard to return to teaching. These children needed someone who understood that life wasn't always easy, someone who could show them that challenges could be overcome with patience, support, and determination. Maria's relationship with Tom had grown stronger through their ordeal, but it had also changed. They had learned to communicate about difficult things, to ask for help when they needed it, and to appreciate simple moments together. Their Saturday morning coffee routine had become sacred. They would sit on their back porch, talking about their week and planning small adventures. The financial stress from Maria's medical treatment had been significant, but they were slowly recovering. Tom had received a promotion at work, partly because his experience caring for Maria had made him more empathetic and organized. They were paying off medical bills gradually and had learned to find joy in simple, inexpensive activities. Maria had also become an unexpected advocate for lymphedema awareness. She started a blog where she shared her experiences and the knowledge she had gained about the condition. The blog began small, with just a few readers, but it grew as more people discovered they weren't alone in their struggles with this misunderstood condition. Through her blog, Maria connected with people from around the world who were dealing with lymphedema. She received messages from newly diagnosed patients who felt scared and confused, just like she had been. Being able to offer hope and practical advice to these people gave Maria a sense of purpose. Beyond her classroom teaching, Dr. Chen had become more than just her doctor. He had become a partner in her ongoing health management. Every 6 months, Maria would travel back to California for checkups and treatment adjustments. These visits were no longer desperate attempts to find help, but collaborative planning sessions for maintaining her health. During one of these visits, Dr. Chen mentioned that he was working on research projects to improve treatment for lymphedema patients. Maria immediately volunteered to participate. She wanted to help other people avoid the months of confusion and dismiss symptoms that she had endured. The research involved trying new compression technologies and documenting her daily symptoms and activities. Maria found the process fascinating and rewarding. She was contributing to medical knowledge that might help future patients receive faster, better treatment. Maria's morning runs never returned, but she discovered other forms of exercise that worked with her condition. Swimming became her new passion. The water supported her body in ways that made movement comfortable and enjoyable. She joined a local water aerobics class and made friends with other people managing various health conditions. One of her new friends was Patricia, a woman in her 60s who was dealing with arthritis. Patricia had initially felt sorry for Maria because of her age and condition, but Maria's positive attitude and determination had inspired her. Together, they started a support group at their community center for people managing chronic health conditions. The support group met every other week and grew from just Maria and Patricia to over 20 regular members. They shared practical tips for daily living, celebrated small victories, and provided emotional support during difficult times. Maria had found a way to turn her painful experience into something that helped others. On quiet Sunday mornings, Maria would sometimes reflect on the journey that had brought her to this point. She wouldn't choose to go through lymphedema again, but she recognized how it had changed her in positive ways. She was more compassionate, more grateful for simple pleasures, and more aware of her own strength. Her students often heard her say that everyone has invisible challenges, and that kindness should always be our first response to others. This wasn't just a teaching philosophy for Maria. It was a life lesson learned through her own struggle. In recovery, Maria's story had become one of transformation rather than just survival. She had reclaimed her life, but it was a different life than the one she had before, richer in some ways, more meaningful, and definitely more connected to the experiences of others who faced daily challenges. The teacher who once ran marathons now helps students run the race of learning and growing. The woman who had felt lost and forgotten by the medical system now helped others navigate their own health journeys. Maria had not just recovered from lymphedema, she had discovered a new purpose that made her struggles meaningful.